Mini episode 704 of the FDH Lounge is brought to you by TV Howl, your home on the web for coverage of today's television scene and a look at the history of the medium as covered by big-time TV critic Adam Buckman. Follow them on the web at tvhowl.com.
The FDH Lounge. You want to schedule your life around it.
A long time ago, on a gloomy, wet Cleveland spring night, two men stand alone amidst the late-night drizzle. Their voices echo across the vacant station parking lot as they debate the merits of the great American radio show that have been missing for far too long. On that night, an idea was born. That idea became the FDH Lounge. Welcome to the FDH Lounge.
Next match.
By the way, a quick thing in between.
Sorry. Good, because that was a shitty
Edge DVD promo.
Anyway. The Decade of Decadence, stolen from Motley Crue's first greatest hits collection.
They did,
which I owned on tape.
I did too, actually.
It wasn't a very good collection either. Remember, they had like a bunch of like new shit.
Right. We're not looking, to every artist ever.
Whatever the song they did on the Ford Fairlane soundtrack. Really? That's on your greatest hits compilation?
To every artist ever on your greatest hits thing, please forego your new music. It's not what we're looking for.
Except Primal Scream was a good track, man.
Okay.
But their cover of Anarchy in the UK,
yeah,
not very good.
Yeah, but I think like Rush has tried to do that. I feel like Rush has had like a million, greatest hits things, but Jesus, we don't need to hear the new stuff.
Yeah.
So, all right. I'm sorry. You were starting to set up the next one here with the Jeff Hardy video, right?
No, well, he wrestles Edge. So, yeah, there was I wasn't going to talk too – well, yeah, I guess we should talk about this Jeff Hardy video because, again, there was a big storyline coming to this match that Jeff had this secret attacker.
Yep. Somebody
had been stalking him, and didn't they at the Survivor – if I remember correctly, didn't the WWE.com try to make it seem like Jeff had OD'd to get late buys for that show? Did they sent out something like he hadn't been seen or something like that, and it turned out that he'd been beaten up in the staircase in the storyline. But I remember them with some sleazy last-second promotion for that Survivor Series show, which was a terrible show.
By the way, folks, just to put over, because I think they did do that, just to put over how sleazy it was. Let's go back to our last mini episode talking about this, the 2008 Royal Rumble, where he did not beat Randy Orton for the title. Like, okay, well, I'm sure great things are going to happen at WrestleMania. Nope, not so much. He was suspended from WrestleMania for another drug relapse. So for them to be, 6 months after he came back, if that, trying to play off of it? Yeah, even by their standards. Yeah. And again, I'm not a fan of PG, but I look at both sides of things as much as I can. At least we're not getting that kind of crap anymore.
Yeah, that's pretty tasteless. That's Fritz von Erich stuff, right?
That is. Oh, yeah.
But I'll say this. So you referenced the last year show, and we had a kind of a debate. Should Jeff have gone over? It turns out to be a moot point because, as you said, he got suspended anyway, so it's not like he could have worked WrestleMania or been in the title program or done anything. Or he was supposed to win Money in the Bank.
Right.
And he didn't. See him poke it. But here, Jeff Hardy's the champion.
Right.
Did he get screwed 2 years in a row? Do you think they pulled... It was obvious going into the show that he was losing here, but disregarding that for a moment, did they take the title off him too early? He was really over during this time period. Like I said, other than Cena, he was the top babyface of the company.
They probably did because... You
and it was something fresh on SmackDown.
Well, here's the thing, too. You could have done a thing where he was the champion but still looking for revenge after it becomes unmasked that Matt Hardy has been the attacker. You could have, if you're bound and determined to do this match, you could still do it. You could have made it a world title program. The interesting thing, too, here is that continuity here, which is unusual because, Jeff Hardy goes to SmackDown in the previous year's draft, so he's over there now. But he's still holding the WWE title that he fought for the previous year because for the second time they flip-flop titles. World title goes to Raw as part of the whole Edge CM Punk cash-in deal the previous year, and the WWE title ended up, I guess Triple H got drafted to SmackDown, yes? And he took the title with him? I think that's how it went.
Yes,
okay.
Triple H did not get the title at WrestleMania 24.
Right.
Was supposed to, but I think they thought too many people knew that was going to happen, so they held it off till Backlash, if I remember, in like
Yes.
a 4 corners match or a fatal 4-way, whatever they call
And
it.
then, like, H beat him, like, 3 times in a row on pay-per-view. I didn't remember how
Randy
long
Orton.
that program was. Randy Orton, yeah.
And then, well, SmackDown switched stations to My Network TV, and Triple H was the kind of the loyal soldier.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to put a big star on there.
Right.
And he's like, all right, I'll go to... It was the only time in his career he worked SmackDown.
Right.
And so, he went to champion, and then they got the belt over on Raw with the whole Edge CM Punk angle.
Right.
Where Punk cashed in Money in the Bank. So, yeah, you're right. But that's a big thing with the softening of this brand. Like, it was... I know they had done it before with Cena Batista.
Yeah.
Like you said.
That's the time everybody remembers. People
Yeah, but
don't
they-
remember this as much.
And I'll tell you why, because there were just too many title changes during this time.
Right.
Especially in late 08.
You're right.
You know, because wasn't there, like, Jericho, he comes in, Jericho, first of all, he won it without Punk ever losing it. Then he, like, lost to Batista, won it right back, then loses to Cena, who had just come back. The SmackDown title, I'll say this, had not changed that much, obviously, because Triple H won it. And then he held it for a long time.
I'm going to build on what you just said because you made me think of something very interesting. That it had always been a rule, as far as I remember, with Money in the Bank, of you call your shot with it, but it's for the brand that you're on. CM Punk, when he came out, I think that was one of the things Edge was trying when he panicked. It was kind of like, you can't do this. CM Punk was cashing in on a guy from the other brand who
It was one
stopped
of
in
those
on
super
Raw.
shows. It was one of those super shows. Yes.
It was, because it was,
Raw didn't have a champion at the time.
Right.
It was in the middle of the draft.
Yes.
And Triple H had just been drafted to SmackDown, and
Right.
Edge was the world champion already on SmackDown.
And he showed up on Raw just to taunt Batista, and then Batista comes out, attacks him, leaves him laying.
Yes.
So CM Punk is cashing in on the
It's
guy
actually a
from the
pretty
other
good
brand.
angle.
It was a great angle, but you're right that it's indicative of the nothing means nothing kind of direction they were going in.
Yeah, with the
They sacrificed for what was a good angle. They sacrificed credibility.
well, they just sacrificed a hard brand split.
Well, I equate a hard brand split with credibility.
Okay.
Okay.
So Jeff wins the title the month before this at Armageddon. Finally, a lot of people kind of thought, and I watched this match before I watched this show, the match he had with Triple H at No Mercy. It's a great match if you haven't watched it in a while. I mean, it's not like an all-timer. I don't even know if it's a match of the year, but it's like a 4-star match. It's really good. It's just straight one-on-one Triple H versus Jeff Hardy match for the SmackDown title. He didn't win, but at that point you could tell that, Jeff he deserved a title run finally.
Right.
I mean, obviously it was tough with the drug issues for them to put their faith in him, they being the company. But he does finally go over in a 3-way, I believe, with Triple H and Edge at Armageddon.
Right.
I think that's what the main.
Because that's what set up him and Edge here.
Yeah. So we have this who's stalking Jeff storyline. There was an incident with a car. Right, like him and his girlfriend have been run off the road by some mystery man, and then there was like a pyrotechnics accident. There was that beating. There was him getting beaten up in the staircase at Survivor Series and not even being able to wrestle.
They played off of
which
some
Edge
things.
came in and won. They did a lot, by the way, during this time period of unadvertised guys coming into a title match and winning.
They did, and it was interesting because they played off some real life things. His house at some point in that previous year had burned down, and they worked it into the title thing. Like whoever did this burned down his house, and I think
I think that was not till after this they did that. Like Matt started taking credit for that.
Oh, okay, and then his dog died too, and I think they worked that into it. I killed your dog.
I think that stuff came after.
Okay,
this, I think, because they didn't talk about that at all.
Okay.
During this show.
Well, you know what? Because like the house burning down was much earlier in the time frame. It was like
or something
like early to mid 08. Well, I think you might have lived.
I think it was when he was on sabbatical from the company.
That's right. I think it was. It was when he was out. So you had that going on, and that set up this match, which I think we would probably agree was the best of the 3 title matches.
Oh, without question.
Well, 3 men's title matches. Obviously, it was better than the women's match.
Yeah, without question. It was probably the best match. That was better than the Rumble.
Oh yeah, match of the night.
But I wanted to
I'll go further.
stick with this stalker angle.
Yes, please.
From everything I've read, it was originally intended to be Christian. That turned out to be this stalker who would just not re-upped with TNA and was going to come back, and this was going to be his big comeback to WWE after being gone for 3 years. He left in the very end of 05?
Yeah.
I think? Yeah. Vince, being Vince, kind of just soured on Christian, and they eventually then went with Matt Hardy doing the big heel turn here, which kind of really didn't make sense. Because the storyline justification was, well, Matt was jealous of Jeff. Well, Matt was already a champion on a brand for most of that time. He was the ECW champion. Remember, Matt and Jeff at one point, for a couple weeks, were both champions in brand. Matt was the ECW champ. Jeff was the SmackDown
They were.
champ.
And I remember on the website that they posted pictures with both of them on there with having the belts. And, the Hardy Boys are both on top. But it was a thing of where they also sort of worked into the storyline a little bit of what we had come to see over the last couple of years, which is forget about the whole thing of whoever wins the Rumble could challenge for one of the 3 titles. All things being equal, it was the title on Raw that people were after the most, and that was usually the WWE title. In this instance, the WWE title was on SmackDown, but they sort of played into the gap in perception between the WWE title and the ECW title. I've got this silver title over here. So
okay, I guess so. In addition to Vince just not being Christian's biggest supporter, and apparently that playing a role in why Christian wasn't given this role and it was instead given to Matt,
with a very hilarious reference made to that on Edge and Christian's new show on the WWE Network. Check it out.
Another reason given is that people, quote-unquote, meaning the internet, knew, air quotes, that it was going to be Christian. And this was during Vince's big kick. If the internet knows it, we got to fool them.
OMG, yeah.
That's very Russo-rific of him.
Yes.
What did you think about the stalker, the assailant, turning out to be Matt Hardy and not Christian?
Well, it's a thing where, and I try not to be somebody who, gets to be like Mr. Douche Chills guy at some wrestling angles or crying, bad taste. But fratricidal kind of stuff, particularly as far as they took it, of what one brother in the storyline almost trying to murder another brother. It's just like, I understand that if you're going to set up Hardy versus Hardy, you have to have some kind of stakes to it, something to trigger it. It's not just going to be which of us two is better, I need to prove it. I understand that, but I mean, as far as they took it, and like I said,
brother versus brother angles, save for Brett versus Owen,
yeah,
because of the overall talent level of those two was able to get over. They never work.
But
remember, they actually had tried to have these guys do a feud many years earlier. This is very forgotten. Vengeance 01?
It was somewhere in there. And it was...
Yeah, it was the show that Jericho unifies the titles on.
Okay, yeah, then that was Vengeance 01.
Yeah. It was the December 01 show. They wrestled against each other, and the crowd just was not digging it, and they just were like, screw it, you're a team again. They completely dropped that storyline.
That was one of the greatest hybrid names ever. Wasn't that Vengeance Night of Champions because they were doing the unification, I think? Or am I thinking of 06? Well, I remember there was a Vengeance Night of Champions in one of these years.
It wasn't 01.
Maybe it was 07. But anyways, okay, well, that's a side thing. But that's Brett Owen never made me uncomfortable because it was like, if I'm seeing two brothers, I want to see it, okay, there's the resentment, there's the whatever, but I want to see it presented as a wrestling angle. And this, they were trying to make it, so real.
Well, the thing is, it's one of these point of no return angles that when you do, it's kind of the issue I have with Undertaker Kane,
right?
Which is obviously a kayfabe brother versus brother situation,
right?
In that the number of, or the McMahons,
right? Yeah, you're
or
right.
Any McMahons,
you're right.
They do these things that are so over the top. And, I don't know, kind of maybe I'm just a stick in the mud asshole. I would never forgive this person,
with you. I'm with you on that. I'm with you. I mean, and that's where, part of it is, too, you and I both have brothers. So it's a thing of where you view it through that prism of, there's, no friggin' way. It just so, I didn't enjoy their feud.
The storyline didn't work. It was blown off rather quickly, too. I mean, they worked against each other at Mania.
Yeah.
And then I think they had the blow-off at Backlash.
Yeah,
and then it was over, and Matt kind of just went back to his place on the card. And Jeff did get another run with the SmackDown title and then left the company at SummerSlam. That great feud with
CM Punk.
Yes.
But it was a thing where, I really felt like part of it, too, is sometimes, and you and I talk about this a lot, the expectations game. And Hardy versus Hardy, the matches just didn't live up to it. It wasn't the dud of late 01, but it didn't
I'm telling you, it's just brother versus brother isn't that great of a dynamic typically.
Right.
And Jeff, I mentioned this earlier, he just didn't seem as over here as he had on some of the previous shows. Like, the crowd was really jacked when he won the title on Armageddon. And I think part of that is because with this angle they were doing, this assailant angle, you kind of figured he was losing here. I think the live crowd figured that.
Probably. Well, the other thing is here, too, and this is one of these things over the years.
Especially when Vicky Guerrero, Heat Machine Vicky Guerrero, which you
right.
pointed out, comes out at the beginning and makes this a no DQ match.
That's right.
Right away, that's kind of like angle alert.
Yeah, exactly.
Edge is going to win this in some heelish fashion.
The other thing,
and it wasn't going
to
be Chavo Guerrero helping him, who was in Edge's corner, by the
way.
way.
Right. And as crowds have gotten smarter over the years, I really think that there's a little bit of this coming to it, of like when it certainly, like in the years after this, I think it happened a lot with Daniel Bryan, of where when a guy is about to get de-pushed, if a guy is right about at the top of the card, and you see that he's about to get de-pushed, then he loses some heat because the people that are buying into him that really want him to be up on top, it's like as soon as Matt comes out and screws him and costs him the match, then, well, Jeff Hardy's not in a world title match at WrestleMania anymore. So, it's the anticipation of your guy about to be taken down a notch.
That's a great point.
Thank
by
you.
That's a great point because the turn did get over live, but not
right.
to the degree that you thought it would.
Right.
And there was, I guess there's like the minor issue of Matt Hardy helping Edge.
Right. I equate it somewhat to...
Edge did a good job acting shocked, though. Again,
right.
Peak Edge. He, as a performer,
yeah,
his like facial reaction towards when Matt comes down and hits Jeff with a chair,
right.
causing the pinfall, is kind of great.
To me, we talked about Peak Edge in 08. To me, that goes through this summer when he goes out with the knee injury. Then he comes back as a face in 2010, and even though he's in the main event the next year at WrestleMania, I feel like that last year of Edge wasn't as great as the run that ended in mid-09.
Yeah, when he got hurt. He got hurt, right?
That's yeah.
Him and Jericho were teaming up, and then he got hurt.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think this 06 through 09,
yes,
Edge, the main event heel, is like his best years.
Absolutely.
No doubt about it. Best match on the show. One thing, we talk about the switching of the belts.
Mm-hmm.
Did you notice this? Edge had the spinner belt? Or Hardy had this, the SmackDown belt was the spinner belt now? It was kind of silly.
It didn't even correlate,
because that was always Cena's belt, but then he kind of lost it when the belts started flip-flopping.
Right, then they were fighting for the big gold belt over on Raw.
Yeah. JR and Taz were getting a little out of hand with alliteration on commentary during this match.
Yeah.
It should be pointed out. Hellacious hat trick. Literally leveled. I'm a big JR guy.
Mm-hmm.
This show was not his finest work, especially the Rumble, which we're about to get into. I thought him and the King surprisingly sucked.
Well, here's the thing, though, and we were by the 09
he worked with
Rumble,
Taz, and like I said, he worked with Taz because that was the smack. Remember, JR had been surprisingly, in more ways than one, especially to him, taken off Raw in 08, and so he was the SmackDown guy with Taz here. But then they do reunite JR and Lawler for the Rumble. Just and people don't remember that.
We were approaching 11:59 of JR doing matches at all on pay-per-view by this point. He didn't have too much longer to go beyond 09. I don't remember when the specific was, but Michael Cole, before you knew it, was doing all of them.
He did WrestleMania 25. I know that, JR.
Okay.
The Michaels Undertaker match. I know he's on the commentary.
Okay.
I don't know how much longer he does it either. Certainly was better than the Grisham Striker ECW team, by the way.
That's right. They were the ones there.
I meant to mention that not only were we sat with Matt Striker in the opening match, we had Todd Grisham, play-by-play guy.
Oh, man. Oh, it doesn't get a whole lot worse than that.
So this Rumble. So we've got our 3 champions set up.
Yep.
And it's time to determine our top contender for one of them.
Who's fighting for the right to challenge Jack Swagger for the ECW title at WrestleMania?
Okay, so who's going to challenge? And I think going in, like we sort of talked about earlier, you knew Orton was going to win this Rumble. There was really no one, although there were some other big names, I don't think there was a better option than Randy Orton. And he was an obvious option, but sometimes obvious is the right way to go.
Yeah, as I want to clarify, as I said before, I'm not ripping that because you do have to differentiate from year to year what you're doing. And there have to be some years out of the bunch. And it's a tiny minority of years of where the spotlight is so heavily on one guy.
Especially coming off that huge angle.
Right.
And they had to find a storyline way to keep him employed.
Right.
Because they were teasing, this could be your last night in the company. And I think what they did is Orton, after he wins this Rumble, he came out on Raw the next night and was like, I'll sue to have WrestleMania not happen if I don't get my
because that's
main
when
event.
he started claiming a disability.
Yeah, he made up some
like the three initials.
disease,
yeah, I
like
forget what it was.
Asshole disease or whatever it was. IED, I think it was.
Intermittent rage disorder.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's never mind. I'm not going to say that. Allegedly. Let's talk about this Rumble, which I rate as very average. I think this is one of the most average WrestleManias, Royal Rumbles I've ever seen.
It's well.
You don't like it at all.
It's well below par for me.
It's funny. I can't wait till when we add these stars up because I feel in the early aughts you were ahead of me consistently.
Yeah,
I'm kind of now ahead of you on most of these in the late aughts.
On this one, and again, I can tell you the number for each of these. I'm ahead of you now. I've watched all of these. I've ranked all of them 1 through
I'm not there
29.
Yet.
This is tied for 22nd. I have it at 2 stars and a tie with 88, 16, and 96.
2 stars is low for
2 stars, yeah. I didn't like it. And as we go through, I'll touch on some of the specifics.
I think this is like a 2 3/4, 3-star Rumble. Very average.
Okay.
I think I said this earlier. The overall talent level here wasn't as bad as I was expecting. Certainly not as bad as it would get in the next couple years, I feel. Like, when, if people go to Wikipedia and look at all the names in here, there aren't a ton of guys you're like, this guy blows, or, I forgot this guy existed. They did have some real blink and you'll miss some gimmicks on TV at this time, but those guys just didn't make it here. Remember, like, with Legacy? Remember they had, like, Sim, Snuka, and Manu, like, trying to be in the group?
Right.
Those guys weren't even mentioned on this show. So, and they weren't the only ones who didn't make this pay-per-view. And again, like you mentioned, you have 3 brands, so somebody's
gonna misinterpret this and call me a racist, but weren't they the same guy? Was there actually a Sim, Snuka, and a Manu? I only remember one Polynesian guy. Was there 2?
I thought there were. Did I make that up?
You're probably right. You're probably right.
I thought I looked it up.
I'm probably wrong. I'm probably wrong about that. I remember there being one Polynesian guy. There was probably 2. Okay, that shows you how forgettable the other elements were.
On, let me double. Did I do something really horrible here?
No. I'm saying you're probably right. I'm not meaning to make you look it up.
I'm going to look it up.
Okay.
Because we may have to do some massive editing if I'm wrong here because I don't like to be wrong. Hold on.
Well, while you're doing that, I'm going to make one other humorous note, which is that in watching this, coming out at number 1 and number 2.
I was right. Yeah, there was 2 guys, Manu and Sid Snuka.
I said you were probably right.
Okay, I thought that I had screwed up their names or something. No. Because I know Sim Snuka was he was Deuce or Domino, and I remember there were some names.
Oh, they repurposed him in that role?
Well, yeah, because they were doing all the generational things.
Okay, I didn't even know he was still around. Okay, but I have in my notes here, Ray number 1, John Morrison number 2, and I'm like, ooh, okay, and early preview of Lucha Underground to come. Of course, that's where they both are in 2016 as we're taping this now. So that was kind of interesting to see them out there. But starting with putting 2 very good workers out there, because when you got Ray and you got Morrison out there, they're going to be really getting it going.
Manu, the son of Afa, Sim Snuka, the son of Jimmy Snuka.
Okay.
Just so we're clear.
All right, both on the old family tree there. Okay.
Yes. Well, yeah, it was Legacy, obviously.
Right.
You remember what they were going for there.
I mean,
Cody Rhodes, Ted DiBiase.
I mean the
Jr.,
Polynesian family tree, because and this is a thing. This is not racist. It's like literally every Polynesian wrestler that's ever been in the business is connected somehow or another.
Except those 2, really. Well, except for the fact they both failed to get into Legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Ray and John Morrison, you had begun talking. Good start. Ray was in this for a long time, and it really felt because there's the one issue, and I bet you're going to raise this too. It seemed like, man, there was always a lot of guys in the ring at one time during this.
I thought the structure of this match was bad in that regard. My big complaint,
there were no parts. Like, usually there's kind of like different sections of every Rumble. This one kind of lacked that.
Right.
And because of it, Ray never got the requisite heat you usually get for being in the Rumble so long.
Because nobody notices it as much when there's the other bodies in there. I'm going to bitch about this a lot more as we get later in the match, because later, I mean, Like when number 30 comes out, the ring is still like super clogged. And I'm going, when number 30 comes out, you shouldn't be looking at it going, okay, from the looks of it, we got another 10, 12 minutes to go here, you know?
Well, again, that's different. A lot of times, they were too sparse by that point. Like with the early Rumbles,
Yeah,
they kind of went home too quick after number 30.
There's a happy medium. I
There
mean,
absolutely is.
It
and
shouldn't
this
be
is
just
too far. Like, wasn't it like 96? Like the match ends like so quick after number 30.
I think
comes
so.
out.
I think
like
so.
This one's too far in the other direction.
Way too far.
But yeah, you mentioned Mysterio. Carlito and MVP are the next guys in the match. So you've got again some good workers here, even if they're some of them aren't being pushed that well.
Right.
We do go down the drain then. Great Khali.
Yep.
Who, look, the Great Khali is not ever going to be confused with Kenta Kobashi. But when you have a guy like that to kind of give him the job, we talk about these guys staying in the match for so long. To give him the jobber treatment for second year in a row in a Royal Rumble.
Here's the thing.
Why are you keeping the guy employed if you're going to take a guy that big and keep him in for a minute 30? Remember the previous year, it was like the same thing. He came out early, and I don't even think he made it a full 2 minutes.
I understand, but I want to say this. Even if how they did it was stupid, that incredibly, just insultingly stupid angle that he did with Johnny Knoxville in like September of 2008, but at least by making him a face, that made it work a little bit more, because then it could be, he's getting taken advantage of by the bad guys, and he did the job here for Kozlov. Kozlov took him out.
Yeah, his ship had sailed as monster potential main event
That's right,
heel.
because like if he's a heel, he has to be a monster. If he's a face, it's possible to fade him back into being a comedy figure.
He's a low.
Exactly.
Low on the rung.
Exactly. And you don't have to put him at the top of the card as a face like you would as a heel. So it made more sense there.
Well,
but I hear you.
Speaking of monster heels, and you referenced the name, this Vladimir Kozlov. Was there anyone shittier during this period than him?
I always thought that was a guy they could have done a little more with.
What? I think this guy may have been one of the worst wrestlers in company history.
I wouldn't say that.
I think he's hideous. He
relied on guys to fly around and bounce for him a lot. I'll give you that. But I mean, if you put him in there with a guy who could, if you put him in there with a guy that could flip and fly, he could give you a good match.
Oh, I never saw one good Vladimir Kozlov match. Are you kidding me?
I would struggle to name one off the top of my head.
Yeah, I know, and you're going to struggle even if you look. This guy sucked. The Triple H versus Vladimir Kozlov program is as heinous as heinous.
What would you rather watch, Triple H versus him or Triple H versus heel Khali?
Oh boy,
I can't believe you're even thinking about that. I'd much rather watch him. I'd much rather watch him and Kozlov.
Khali, just for the freak show element.
Yeah,
Vladimir Kozlov.
Kozlov wasn't immobile though.
What?
Not compared to Khali.
He could not work, man. Kozlov could not work.
Listen, he's no Glenn Jacobs as far as a smooth-moving big man. I'm not saying that he is, but I don't hate him to the extent you do.
I would name him the worst wrestler of 2008. I would struggle to name anyone worse than him.
What about if you go back a couple of years to the muscle heads we named from past Rumbles, like Heidenreich and some of these other guys? I mean,
I think
Nathan Jones.
I think I like them more than I think Kozlov is just the absolute nadir.
You really got a stiffy for him. I don't I mean,
I have the opposite for him.
I was not great.
The opposite of a stiffy.
I don't think he was great, but I'm not down on him like you are. But Triple H, of course, then has to come in and take out
I'll
Kozlov.
tell you what, if there is ever a time for Triple H to come in and bury a heel that was just, normally I hate that, because so Kozlov comes in and throws out a bunch of people, and then Triple H comes in and throws him out. Normally I hate that kind of booking, but because I got rid of Kozlov, I'm fine with it. One thing that was interesting about this Rumble is a lot of the big names came in weird positions, like in the middle.
Yeah.
Triple H is number 7, Orton's number 8,
but almost
Jericho's 11, Undertaker's 16. They did shoot their wad with the star power.
Yes, almost nobody after Undertaker. The biggest one after the Undertaker, by far, was RVD in the surprise return of 25. Yeah. And RVD is, at this point, nobody's idea of a main eventer. Surprise return or not.
No, because he's a surprise return. He's obviously not going to win, although he drew one of the biggest reactions in the match.
Right.
Though, I do like the idea of just kind of, although they may have jammed them all too close together.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of like a number 7 or a number 8 kind of winning. Because I'm so sick. I think I texted you this at some point between the last episode. If I never see a guy number 1 or number 2 winning it again, I'll be fine with that.
I agree.
Like I feel like 06, that's part of my problem with that one, is I felt that I'd seen that too many times already, and I was just like, it was killing the idea of the luck of the draw element of the gimmick.
I didn't like that either, but I had much bigger problems with 06 than that.
Well, yeah, obviously that's not the biggest problem with that show.
Yeah.
And then they went kind of far in the overcompensating the other direction, where number 30 had never won, and then he wins 2 years in a row.
That's right.
So I'm all for weird numbers, kind of just going, or at least one guy coming in at, like, The Rock in 01, he was like a weird number and was there to the end.
I agree. I like that. But you gotta sprinkle it out a little bit. No, you did.
And
particularly,
it was funny with Triple H and then Orton coming back to back.
Right.
That was a mistake because they sort of hogged the whole match.
Well, and here's what's interesting, and this is one of these things of where,
like, Jericho was a real non-factor for being as hot as he was in 08.
I totally agree with that. Here's one of the interesting things, and I guess the common motif seems to be that it's around the McMahon family, because I'm going to compare something to what we just saw, again, giving it away when we're taping this on Raw, the return of Shane O'Mac that nobody saw coming. The fact that Triple H and Orton were both in the ring here, Orton had just kicked Vince McMahon in the head, whatever. The fact that they didn't reference too much, they didn't do too much to play upon Triple H and Orton, in retrospect, should have made you think they were going to go there a month later, do the shocker of like, oh, he's Vince's son-in-law.
Yeah, but you know what? I think it shows a lack of long-term planning. Like, maybe they weren't planning on doing it yet because he was married to Stephanie here.
No, but I think...
I'm talking about kayfabe. Like, if you're Triple H, the character, and you down the line get all pissed about Randy Orton doing this to your stuff, to your family. And I guess, granted, Orton, he RKO'd
You're
Stephanie
right. That's
down
a big plot hole.
Like, why was he not pissed here?
That's right. He
wasn't like, they didn't, like,
that if they were going to do the reveal.
There was no inclination. And it's, again, we'll talk about this.
You're absolutely right. They should have kept them apart in the Rumble if they were going to do the reveal later.
Or they should have teased massive tension and had you wanting to see that match. I guess they did, because it comes down to them. But, they didn't, because I guess they had not done the big reveal that Triple H is a McMahon, but they didn't have, like, Triple H, and I guess since they hadn't revealed it, they couldn't seek for justice. I don't know. It just seemed that, again, when you look back at it, I can't believe he's done this to my family. And again, he RKO'd Stephanie down the line.
That was what did it.
That was what did it. That was the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back.
Right.
But I don't know. It seemed, because a lack of long-term vision seemed to be the issue with that WrestleMania. But anyway, we're still in the middle of the Rumble.
That's right.
Triple H, by the way, was originally, if you go back and watch SmackDown, or one of the SmackDowns going up to the show, was actually supposed to be number 1 in this Rumble, and then they just ixnayed that.
Wow.
They did an angle where, him and Vicky were having issues, and Vicky was like, you're going to be number 1, and then they edited all that off the television. Oh. And they just didn't do it anymore.
Okay.
Which,
wow.
I don't know. I guess we'd seen it before. I don't know why they did that. And they just made him number 7, and he stays in a long time anyway. Crime Time does this coin flip. That was kind of amusing.
Double-sided coin flip.
Why was only one of them allowed in? Was there some storyline I missed there, or was that just... Because that wasn't explained that well.
I think it had to do with Vince McMahon's racial quotas, but I'm not sure.
All right, there we go.
But that's, by the way, speaking of tag teams here, it's always interesting to see what happens when there's a tag team where both guys are smaller than Triple H, which means, of course, Miz and Morrison both go out at the hands of Triple H.
Yes, they get the old brainbuster spot from Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
It was actually almost an identical spot.
Yeah.
It was cooler when Hogan did it. I'll give the devil his
due. Well, it had Arn and Tully in it. That's why.
Yeah. Do you know who I'm not a big fan of, and you're going to probably tell me I'm not giving him a chance? Ted DiBiase Jr. Very bland. And it was funny because
he was a smooth guy, but he just never connected.
They didn't really start playing up the legacy domination, which was, I guess, the big storyline in this match.
Right. They were working
until
together.
Rhodes came in a little bit down the line, and then it was the 3 of them. And that, I guess, was the big storyline of this match, that you had 3, that you had DiBiase and Rhodes basically working to make sure Orton won the match.
Right.
But, yeah, DiBiase came in, and it was like, I don't know, 5-10 minutes until Rhodes came. And then, like, all of a sudden, Legacy started working together. It was like DiBiase came in, and kind of a metaphor for his career was invisible. And not
That's
really
right.
doing it, playing off Orton at all.
Well, them working together would play a bigger part as the match went along.
Yes.
But I know what you mean. It wasn't as much as it should have been. There was another thing that was interesting, particularly in retrospect vis-a-vis politics, looking at this. A spot where CM Punk reverses the pedigree into the GTS on Triple H.
It's funny you mentioned that. So he broke somebody's nose with the GTS in the weeks before this show.
Okay. Was probably in the
think.
doghouse for that.
And he gives him, if you look at it, like one of the weakest GTSs ever to Triple H.
Okay.
He's like, oh, I'm not breaking this guy's nose. It's funny you referenced that because I did too. It seemed, and I don't know, maybe it's just these guys were big Michaels fans. We had some younger talent in this. A lot of guys were doing the I'm going to go over the top rope, dangle my feet spot. A lot of them. And there weren't a lot of eliminations. There were a lot of
Morrison did that like every year.
Yeah, there were a lot of near eliminations, but not a lot of actual eliminations, which started to hurt the match. I think you would agree.
By the way, speaking of Legacy 2, the first of what would be 117 years in a row of a Goldust Cody face-off in the Rumble.
Yep. And they actually referenced that they were brothers.
Right. That wasn't nearly the reveal of Triple H being Vince's son-in-law.
Yes, but of course. For there being so few eliminations, it seemed that when there was one, either the camera would miss it or JR would miss it. I talked about earlier, JR didn't have his best Rumble call here. He seemed tired.
Yeah.
And just, like, not trying very hard. But, like, Mark Henry gets eliminated.
Right.
And it's kind of just goes without, and it's like the first elimination forever, and it's not even like, it's like, oh, Mark Henry's gone.
Yeah.
It's just kind of and they do it on replay.
The production truck was not having their A game.
Yeah, and JR like, it's funny, like, Ray springboards, he gets it with an RKO, and JR starts going crazy that Rey Mysterio did some move, and Lawler, of all people, was like, JR, I think he actually got RKO'd there. And JR's like, what? I'll have to see that again. And then they show that thing, and it's like as plain as day. And JR's like, well, oops.
Vince was screaming at him in the headset.
Yeah. I'm trying to think what else kind of happened. This is when the match starts to slow down. I've got in here my notes. Regal and Punk had an IC title program going on here.
That's
Actually,
right.
It's always nice to see when the guy you're feuding with, you go right for him. Kudos to William Regal there. He had just lost the IC title to Punk, went right after him. Got a little heat. Taker, we referenced, came in at number 16. There's blood, which I found interesting because I thought you weren't supposed to be bleeding during this time period.
Right. Especially in a Rumble match because...
And I didn't see how it happened, so maybe it was hard way? I don't know.
Could have been. You got to figure it was hard way because it's not impactful in a Rumble match. Plus, definitely a little bit more dangerous with the airborne blood with all the bodies, particularly in a congested Rumble match, which we keep coming back to.
Yeah. Of
I mean,
all the guys,
if Undertaker had HEP, you could have had 10 guys picking it up by the end of that match.
Of all the guys
I'm saying
who got extended runs in this match, why the fuck was Mike Knox one of them?
I don't know.
He it's one of those things where
was he still on the roster? This was way after his sell-by date, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things I never get. Look, this is a hard match to book. Let's be honest. It's a hard and intricate match to book.
It is.
But it seems that sometimes they make one of two mistakes. Either they eliminate guys too quickly, like they give the guys they give a guy 2 minutes of spotlight offense, then he just gets tossed by the next guy.
Right.
Or they do what they do with Mike Knox, where he comes in, does absolutely nothing of note, is in the corner, you never think of him, and he gets tossed in meaningless fashion after being in the match for 20 minutes.
Well, and that's the thing.
When I look back again and compare all Rumbles to the best one of them all, 92, you didn't have that, really. It felt in that Rumble, everyone was in for the proper amount of time.
And that's where, again, you're saying, well, we know how much they put it. I'm saying just the opposite. I feel like they did mail this one in because there is not a logical explanation for how these things could happen. Again, there was no flow to it.
No, it feels like this one missed Pat Patterson or something.
I referenced it before. I had a friend that came over toward the latter part of when I was watching this, and I finished watching it while he was here. He's not particularly a wrestling fan, and I said, hey man, I'm sorry. I said, if you'd been here for the end of '08, I said, I know you're not a wrestling fan, but you'd be into it a little more than you are now. I said, I feel like I've subjected you to a really bad one. And again, I hadn't had all of them to compare it to. I'm saying tied for 22nd, 2 stars, one of the worst ever. To me, this is right about.
It was
at the top.
There
of the
are other Rumbles that have done more egregious things and had less star power.
This is right about at the top of that bottom quarter. This is.
Well, here
I don't like.
We still need to talk about this last little part.
Sure.
Shelton. I actually just listened to Shelton Benjamin. It was an older one. It's not like it's recent. So
okay.
Maybe people may have heard this. Do a Talk is Jericho.
Okay.
Show, and he talked about how toward the end of his run he was working with Undertaker on SmackDown, and it was right after this. And in the back they kept saying, "Oh, these are good matches, man," and he was obviously losing them. But these are good matches, man. These are good matches, man. And then, like, after that, he just winds up jobbing to R-Truth in 2 minutes. He's like, well, I thought I was having good matches. I know I reference all that because in this Rumble, he gets kind of tossed in ho-hum fashion by The Undertaker.
Yeah.
They missed the boat with Benjamin.
They really did. And look,
I mean, I don't know if he could have been a main event guy, but he's a guy who could have got a more serious push. He sort of had the rug pulled out from under him, I feel, in 2004.
Yeah.
Now,
he was pretty hot after he beat Triple H clean.
Yeah, no, I remember they did have him beat Batista and Flair as well, and it built up to him getting an IC title shot at the even more red hot Randy Orton. And I didn't think he should have won that match. I remember.
Well, it was they had to get the belt off of Orton. They had to give it to somebody.
They wound up giving it to Edge, who returned.
Oh, that's right. That's right. But he was on a hell of a run. But this is one of these things, though. I mean,
he got a lot. He was a big victim of the stop-start pushes.
Well, and you know what it was too. I mean, he's a guy. If you look at the history of his career, it's a lot of the same stuff as the modern-day poster child for start-stop pushes. Now mostly stop pushes, Dolph Ziggler, because political problems in the back. Sheldon Benjamin, is like, I say if some of these guys spent less time playing video games and more time watching matches, it was that kind of crap.
Who was that an impression of?
Good old JR.
JR was a big Benjamin fan, though.
Was he really?
Yeah, I thought he was.
Somebody was not a fan of his. Well, JR used to take shots in his column about the video game players, and
he
Sheldon.
Did. Yes, that's true.
How is it at that time you don't get anywhere being a gamer? And today, Xavier Woods is getting towards the top of the card, but partially by being a gamer.
Because they have the big video game.
That's
guess why.
So.
Okay, you want the answer? Because they have a very big video game they like to sell. That's why.
All right. Well, the more things change, the more they
change. It was too bad there was no WWE 2K8
the more
or whatever.
They really change. Yeah. Sheldon
or was there? I don't play video games at all.
Was
there? Somebody might correct me and say there was
a
video game.
I'm still a guy that plays on a Sega Genesis more than anything else, so you're asking the wrong guy.
Yes. Yeah. Surprised you don't still play Richard Nixon videotapes. Couple guys that would have killed for Shelton Benjamin's career trajectory. Brian Kendrick, treated like a real geek here.
The Brian Kendrick.
Yes, the Brian Kendrick, with Ezekiel Jackson as his bodyguard. A real blink and you'll miss it appearance.
Yep.
Dolph Ziggler, you referenced him.
Yes.
He's in this, and he also gets tossed. I think he was brand new. He comes in, and he looks at Kane. He's like, "Hi, I'm Dolph Ziggler."
He was doing that stupid introduction gimmick in the beginning.
And then, Kane just chucks him out. That's a great way to get over a new character, by the way.
It
and
is.
By a great way, I mean the worst.
Well, here's the thing.
I don't know if you got my sarcasm.
Okay, I didn't.
It was a fucking terrible way to get over a new character.
I was rolling with you on that, but yeah, the sarcasm, I guess I agree with more than that. But here's the thing. Anytime you're doing a gimmick, there's supposed to be a parody of stuff in the back. Of new guys introducing themselves every time they walk into an arena.
Nobody gets that.
That doesn't draw
cares.
money. Yeah.
No, nobody cares.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, again, they just paid too much. It's so funny, this company's relationship with quote-unquote smart fans.
Right.
Sometimes they neglect them too much. Sometimes they pay far too much attention.
Right.
It never it's disregard your hardcore fan base when you want to push Roman Reigns, but, we're going to cater to them with handshake angles that nobody freaking gives a shit about.
I know. I mean, like if they're going to try and
handshake angles.
If they're going to try
if
and
DDP had come back and done this, I would have laughed.
No, that would have been funny, or
or
again,
if you would have hugged Vince McMahon.
Exactly, and if you're although again, I guess as long as they're going to be parodying real life stuff, at least we're not getting a gimmick. Thank God for small favors of Shannon Moore doing a gimmick stealing the wives of quadriplegics. At least we're not getting anything like that.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Well, that didn't happen, did it?
I don't know. I'm no comment.
Where do we go from here?
No comment. I'll tell you where we go. RVD. Oh, there was one other guy given the geek treatment besides Kendrick and Ziggler.
Who?
Santino Marella, but that's okay because he was comedy anyway.
Yes.
That was okay. So I think...
Was that the 1 second thing?
Yes.
Was this the year?
That was okay.
Yeah.
The way they played it up, they broke the Warlord's record. RVD, I was going to say, not the only legend in this match. We also got 1988 Royal Rumble winner Jim Duggan. And who of all the people in 2009 does The Undertaker sell for in this match? God damn Hacksaw Jim Duggan. The Undertaker doesn't sell this whole match except for when he works with Jim Duggan. I was just like, for Christ's sake.
The funny thing is, I don't think he was selling for Jim Duggan back in 91, so
yeah,
that makes it even better. But you got him at 29, Big Show at 30, and that's where...
There was a weak crop at the end here. There was no big name.
You shouldn't have that. You shouldn't...
It was kind of like... And you're right. It kind of killed the Rumble. It's like, all right, well, the big names are in there.
Right.
And this is one where it should have been, you need Triple H, Orton, Jericho, Taker, should have been, like, throwing a lot of guys out during the course of the match.
You need a more even disbursement.
Yeah.
And not only that, like you said, to have the names doing impactful things here, and to have, as you said, more flow, more ebb and flow like you expect out of a Rumble match.
Yeah, because Ray had been in the match for like almost 50 minutes and drew almost no real heat.
What's interesting is, and I'm gonna go back to actually a figure from pro wrestling to make my point, albeit this was about something else. But doing a Super Bowl preview of Super Bowl 48 on the show with Lex Luger. We're rolling through all this. We're detailing all the ways that Seattle's going to win. And then in the end, yeah, Rick, but in the end, I can't go against Peyton Manning. So he agrees with me on everything, but then he takes Denver. I feel like you're doing that right now because all my substantive criticisms of the match you're agreeing with, and yet you're not giving it the absolute drizzle and shiznits rating
I think there's legit criticisms on it.
Why doesn't it add up to something that is at the hinge of the bottom?
Because because I know what the hinge is, and it's better than that. It's when I rank stars a 2-star Rumble for me or 2-star showing is like 93. This is much better than 93. I know you disagree.
I gave 93 3
stars. Yeah, I know, but
I
think you're insane for that. Like that's with the rating system. It's like I look at the Rumbles. I'm like, okay, this is what this one got. I like this one more than that. Like, this is better than 06.
By the way,
not by a lot.
That only put 93 in a tie for 11th, so it's not as bad as you initially thought, I'm sure.
I have it in my bottom 5.
Wow. You are way off on that one.
No.
Okay.
So, I mean, I know the Rumbles that are ranked around this.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes in line. The thing with me is, we've talked about this, we've joked about it, I think, more off-air than on.
Mm-hmm.
But our distribution of the star ratings, you're just like polar opposite. For you, it's either it was no good, or like you have like a ton that are clustered probably around 2 stars and around 4 stars. Most of mine are clustered around 3.
I have some around 3, but I probably have more. Yeah.
Like the vast majority of mine are between like 2.5 and 3.5 stars. If you're out you're out of that realm,
I got more on either side.
Yeah,
of that. You're right.
If you're out of that realm, 2.5 to 3.5, either something's really wrong or something's really good.
Okay.
Like there's only above 3.5. There's only I think 5 Rumbles I'm giving higher than 3.5.
Right.
And under 2.5, there's more than 5, but it may not be more than like 7.
But
that's like 2/3 of these things are going to be within 2.5 to 3.5.
Here's the thing with me structurally, though. I mean, I'll grant you, there's no one big thing
There's nothing
here.
awful about this.
But there's just
it's just
like,
nothing great.
But for me, it's the death of 1,000 cuts. It's like I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. It just adds up.
I guess to me, it wasn't so much that I don't like this. It was just, I don't really like this.
Well,
I guess I looked at it like nothing offended me in this match. We do still need to get to the ending, by the way, because the right guy. And here's another thing: the right guy goes over here.
That's not an end all be all to where it's going to override things for me in that way.
Well, it doesn't have. I mean, like for instance, like Shawn Michaels obviously had to go over 95, and that wasn't enough to save that particular match.
It can't save a shiznit sandwich in my book.
But I just don't think this was shiznit.
Okay.
It's to say, I just thought it was. Like when I think of this, like this is a very middle of the road Rumble to me. Like there's a lot worse. Like the ones in the mid 90s, most of them worse than this, just because the roster.
Yeah.
But this was better than like 91.
Where do I have 91 ranked?
The one that Hogan wins.
I do. Okay, I have 191 at 1 3/4.
Like the other
so
ones,
I have a quarter
the
less.
other ones that I, for instance, have at 2 3/4. Like this is like around like 97, 89 for me. Even 94, which I like more than you. It's a slightly below par Rumble, is where I would say.
All right.
Is it? I believe it is slightly below par. I just don't think it's horrible.
I've got these, sort of in clumps because there's ties at a couple of star ratings. So what's interesting is...
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, for me, I don't have more than, like, 3 Rumbles at any star rating.
I have a clump 16 to 18 where it's tied for 16th because it's basically those 3 that are tied for 16th at 2.5 stars. So that's more or less like about where you probably, when you talk about a little bit below that, 16 through 18 out of 29 is probably about in the ballpark you're looking at. I'm saying tied for 22nd.
That's gonna be, I do not have that many Rumbles below 2.5 because there's what? How many Rumbles have there been? Like now? Like
29 as of today.
Yeah, I do not have more than 10 Rumbles below 2.5 stars. No way.
Oh, I don't have. I only have 4 Rumbles below 2. Well, or
2.5.
2.5. Okay, 2.5. I have 11.
Yeah,
so
that's a lot.
Okay.
I probably have like 7 at the most, and some of them have yet to come, and I'm anticipating those being below.
Probably,
I know there's 2 that will absolutely be below 2.5 stars.
As you said, the right guy went over. It was a thing where the legacy thing played heavily into the finale of Triple H having to do the 1-on-3 thing.
Yeah,
with,
and Undertaker Big Show, that drew no heat, man.
Right.
I thought. They were trying to play for this big showdown. I don't know, again.
We'd seen it too many times.
Was that like a WrestleMania program they were thinking? Because Big Show had beaten Undertaker clean a couple months previous at a pay-per-view.
Yeah, they did a program in the fall.
It almost seemed like they were maybe trying to stretch it to Mania, and like at that moment they probably knew, okay, no, that's not Mania.
Yeah.
That's not Mania.
Yeah.
Just like Michaels was like, I want to get out of this JBL thing.
Right.
Taker's like, he's bringing the strap down against the Big Show, and he's like, nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
Not feeling it.
So, yeah, they both go out, and, it's Triple H against Legacy. Triple H obviously throws Rhodes and DiBiase out.
Right.
Orton tosses him, wins the match, gets a pretty big babyface reaction.
That's the whole thing here, too. Going against Vince McMahon, it's always a tricky thing.
Oh, my God. Are we going to hit on the same
Brock
thing
Lesnar
here?
4 years later. The whole thing heading into WrestleMania 4 years later when Brock breaks Vince McMahon's hip. I'm sorry, folks. No matter how you've presented Vince McMahon on air, that's a babyface move.
Okay, let's just get into this then because you've
Have I
obviously
preempted your
stolen
point?
my notes
Okay.
or looked at them.
Well, great minds think alike.
Yes. All right, so it was obvious Randy Orton was going to win here. And
Yeah.
he was the right guy to go over here.
Yes,
There's no
he
doubt
was.
about it in my mind.
Yes.
Why wasn't his value more maximized here? Because you talk about the road to WrestleMania, he was this red-hot heel. He gets in the main event, winds up working opposite Triple H. He doesn't go over. I think he wins the next month. It's kind of like a little bit of the reverse from the previous year, where he wins the title at Backlash. I know you're going to say, well, Randy Orton was a main eventer the rest of 2009.
Right.
He wasn't that special by the end of 2009, though.
Well,
and I feel they squandered him a little bit.
The title had been on and off of him too much. He was sometimes winning it by means that were way too cheap. Remember the final the finish at SummerSlam? Brett DiBiase, who never made it out of developmental, is the one who comes in and costs John Cena the title. Everybody's scratching their head going, what? So Randy Orton was just in a lot of convoluted stuff.
Should they have turned him babyface here? Because you talk about because I want to talk about, I think a big reason that the Triple H Orton dynamic didn't work as well as they had hoped.
Mm-hmm.
And again, maybe we're wrong. Maybe it did work for a lot of people because this WrestleMania still drew pretty good numbers. I mean, it did not draw as well as the previous 2 years, and then the 3 that involved The Rock later all did better.
Yeah.
But from WrestleMania's 23 to 29, this was the second lowest number of buys.
Right.
But, I mean, it still did over 900,000 buys, close to 1 million. I think it did over 950,000, which is a lot. That includes worldwide, obviously. But that dynamic, I think you touched on it, why it wasn't as good as they had hoped.
Well, yeah.
You know, on paper, it sounds great.
Right.
Orton attacks the McMahons. Triple H, hey, I'm a McMahon, and he comes back swearing vengeance. But you touched on a key thing. The McMahons are not sympathetic baby faces.
No, they're not.
Just look at what they're doing now in 2016. And, like, think of all the shit they've done. It's like, now we're supposed to, like, why is this so heinous? But when Steve Austin stunned this asshole, it was the greatest thing since sliced bread.
It's totally inconsistent, and it's a thing where what it led to was, for the second time in Triple
And it's not
H's...
like Vince had been cheered going into that show. He'd been off TV for a long time, presumably dead.
Right. And it was a thing where Triple H, now for the second time in his career...
And also, by the way, a Triple H, let's just say it, he's a lousy babyface.
Well, he wrestles also as a babyface for the second time. A flat final match at WrestleMania like 02 where him and Jericho couldn't follow Hogan and The Rock. Same thing here.
The build with Jericho was much worse than the build with Orton.
Now, that's true, but you get to Mania, and it's a thing of where the McMahons, who are omnipresent, who are godlike in their company, somehow find themselves saddled with a stipulation where Triple H loses the title if he gets disqualified. Holy plot holes, Batman. And not only that, that's a match that cried out for the previous year. Triple H in his matches with Kozlov on top of SmackDown. Other matches, well, the matches on it, but he got to use the plunder. Cena really didn't, main eventing Raw in his matches by and large. This is a match that cried out for plunder. You can't book something as a blood feud and then like, oh, hey, let's trade wrist locks in the main event of WrestleMania.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're right. Given the angle to have that title could change
and
on
Randy
DQ
Orton has
step.
pointed out the same thing. Randy's like, we were dead in the water with that step. You know,
that was bad.
It was horrible.
I always forget about that. That was bad.
How does Triple H end up with this stip? And like he gets patted on the back by Vince McMahon before he goes out there. You know, go get him, son. You know, it's like, okay.
Jesus.
Hey, you think you could maybe give me a street fight match here? You know, how is that not?
Yeah, think you'd be like, you know what, Randy Orton, you want in the main event? It's going to be a street fight. Anything goes.
Yeah.
Overbook a Mania. You're right. If there was ever a time for Overbook a Mania to be running wild,
This was it.
Yeah.
This was absolutely it. So that worked against him. Here's a funny thing here, too. We talked about this in terms of the brand split era Royal Rumbles. Of like, oh, the last two guys in there, oh, well, you know, they're both going to be in the main event. You know, usually it was on separate sides. You lose that one. In this one, you talk about all the last-minute crap for WrestleMania 25. Triple H the next month in the Elimination Chamber wins back. I don't even remember if it was the world title or the WWE title because they were flip-flopping them so much. But anyways.
It was the SmackDown title.
So
because remember, Triple H was
won.
Triple H was a SmackDown guy still.
And then Edge lost that one, got in the other one, won the world title, and was part of the forgettable three-way with Cena and Big Show at WrestleMania.
Like we said, folks, the Big Show had softened. Yes, the Big Show had softened.
Well, yeah.
But the brand split, another BS word.
Yeah.
How appropriate.
Yeah.
Had softened, folks. You need a scorecard to keep track of these title changes.
Now it was like during WrestleMania season, they went to this thing of anything goes.
You know what? They were relying and they got burned a little bit by this.
Mm-hmm.
No Way Out 08 did a great number. Rumble 08 did a great number because No Way Out 08 is when they introduced the Elimination Chamber.
Right.
As kind of like a big fork in the road to WrestleMania.
But that should be the one they use for the non-Royal Rumble title shot. That's all it should be.
Well, they started doing two, and the idea was, okay, you're going to find out who the challenger is at Rumble and you're going to find out who the champions are. But you're right. At least one of the title programs,
Yeah.
the big one,
Yeah.
needs to be set after the Rumble, and it wasn't. And the whole problem with WrestleMania 25 and why a lot of people, I think, if you ask people that were in the company, were maybe not as bullish as the public projections that were being put out, were they just waited too long to get a lot of these programs going.
They did. I mean,
and when they did get them going, the TV wasn't exactly inspiring, particularly with that three-way you mentioned, Cena, Big Show, and Edge. That was just...
And they inserted Vicky in it as part of a love triangle between Edge and Big Show, which was... The whole match was just a setup for Cena to give the AA spot to both of them at the same time, which was an impressive visual, but you don't book an entire WrestleMania program around that.
Really, other than the Jeff Matt thing, which was set up here, there was no obvious WrestleMania matchup until after No Way Out.
And that's the thing. I mean,
which is a mistake. Now, I guess we're kind of used to them doing that now.
Right.
But at least in 2016, what they did was they did set up 3 matches basically immediately on Raw.
Right.
They didn't do that here. And then there was the whole situation with Mickey Rourke, with the wrestler.
Right.
Is he going to be there? What's his role? They didn't know.
And I've said this before, that what happened was, I remember reading about this at the time.
WrestleMania 3, this was not.
The Oscars people were whispering in his ear, you better not do the match because you're not going to have a chance anyways for the Oscars.
And so he was non-committal to it until he didn't win the Oscar.
My thing was, with Batista being hurt, because the biggest thing to do for WrestleMania 25 was
unify the titles.
Cena, Batista, unify the titles. You put one, you make sure each one of them is champion. Having said, if you're not going to do that,
what do you do with Orton then?
He could still do a blood feud thing with Triple H. It just would not be for a title.
What about? I guess it was never going to happen, and this is just fantasy land shit. Meltzer was really entertaining the notion of Steve Austin being brought back in that role for vengeance for Vince McMahon. If you read the Observer's that time period, he had this huge hard-on, and Meltzer's usually not that wrong.
Yeah.
He was just off with his speculation, because you look back at it now, you're like, that was, I don't think, ever being considered.
No,
but he was really pointing to this idea that, Orton, okay, you can be in the main event of WrestleMania, but it's not going to be a title match, and oh, by the way, here's your opponent, glass shatters, it's Steve Austin.
Even the best of us can get caught up by wishful thinking, and I'm afraid that's what happened to Dave Meltzer in that situation. My thing is, short of the dream possibility of Cena-Batista title unification, what I go with...
And that was obviously couldn't happen because Batista got hurt, and they had also blown the match at SummerSlam the previous year.
Right.
Unless, I guess, Cena's going to, they could do the thing where Batista, I've beaten you before, and I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
And... Cena gets his win back,
title
which
for
he
title
would
at
have.
WrestleMania 25 with Cena going over writes itself. But you had a situation where they blew it. You talk about all the hot-shotting in this period, second-guessing and changing on the fly, of where Cena makes one of his miracle recoveries, comes back, wins the championship. Late 08, wins it from Jericho at the Survivor Series.
Who was red hot at the time. Probably should not have lost the title.
That should have been the Mania program, folks, because Cena... Remember, said it before, hadn't had the title since getting stripped for injury in October of 07. You would have had John Cena, the defining babyface of the time period, having not had the title for 16 months coming into WrestleMania. It writes itself. You have, Jericho taunting him, you're not the man anymore, I am. I'm the one that was the first unified champion.
What do you do with Edge, then?
What do you do? Well, look, Edge was in a forgettable main event
He
program
was. I guess he was. So, you're just saying,
just put him in another forgettable program because the program he was in sucked. By the way, what you could do at this time period, too, is, if Edge had anybody in his corner, whether it be Vicky Guerrero or whatever, you tie in Mickey Rourke. Mickey Rourke's going to be in John Cena's corner. There's your WrestleMania 25 main event.
So I take it you did not really like the Jericho Mickey Rourke program for the show.
I didn't like it. I didn't like the thing of him with the Legends. Him and Steamboat had a good match within a match, although what was disconcerting watching this is Ricky Steamboat in his prime, no homo, one of the most handsome men ever to wrestle. He looked like Vern Gagne with the hairline, didn't he? I mean, it was like It's like, am I watching Vern Gagne out there? And Ricky Steamboat being bald was just jarring. I felt like
Homo, what is this? Who was that? Was this Pretty Boy Swag? Was this Soldier Boy or something like I'm doing this show with?
I was saying no homo.
Good Lord.
Not
there's anything wrong with that.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Good Lord.
What is it? We're not allowed to say that anymore in Obama's America? Come on. But anyways.
You're allowed to say that in Richard Nixon's America.
But anyways, I didn't really like that program very much. I wasn't very enamored of it. The whole thing, too, people are going to try and point to, well, at least it had one of the greatest matches of all time, Michaels Taker, to which I say, look, that doesn't redeem the card because, that was a match they probably put the least amount of thought into. And it was a layup.
And it was the match where, again, I always tell us that people are so big with these surprises these days.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fact that it was so competitive and people kind of bought some of the finishes and that is what really helped it, because that's the one that really got the streak going as one of the big drawing cards of WrestleMania for the next couple of years. But everyone kind of generally knew going into that match that Taker was going to go over.
Sure. Well, even the whole angle of it, too, where it was a little bit weird, was the unbeatable man at WrestleMania versus Mr. WrestleMania. Well, Shawn Michaels was Mr. WrestleMania because in the whole postmodern sense, he's the greatest performer. That doesn't equate to one-loss record. He puts on the best matches at WrestleMania.
Yeah. And that's what basically it was done for. They probably looked at this card, they're like,
right.
We need a great match.
In the kayfabe sense, Shawn Michaels is not Mr. WrestleMania.
All right, do you know what WrestleMania you can kind of compare WrestleMania 25 to in terms of the one-match show element? But it's better than this WrestleMania,
12?
obviously. No.
Which also had Shawn Michaels in the biggest match.
13.
13? Yeah.
Bret Hart. Because if you look about it, what are the two matches that most people will debate on are the two best in Mania history?
Yeah.
Hart Austin, Michaels Taker. Now, I'm a little... I don't mean to disparage Michaels Taker. I actually have 4 matches better than it in WrestleMania history.
2 from your beloved WrestleMania 10, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And then Savage Steamboat.
Okay.
In the sense that, and maybe if we get into a WrestleMania discussion, we could talk about this. I just think that Michaels Taker, what they did, while very impressive and all time, is actually not as impressive as any of those other 4 matches.
Well,
but here's the thing when people say, oh, well, it's got, WrestleMania 13 is not regarded as a very good WrestleMania, right?
Right.
And it's, in fact,
horrible.
In terms of business, it's the worst.
Right.
But
worse than 11?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
WrestleMania 13, it wasn't even the top 5 bought pay-per-view in 97.
Oh, God, okay.
Yeah, WrestleMania 13 is the nadir of WrestleMania.
Okay.
Absolutely, because, again, the booking was all over the place. Remember that Shawn lost his smile and everything was thrown to hell.
Right.
So here's my thing. Now, WrestleMania 25 did, in the grand scheme of things, very strong business. So it cannot be necessarily lumped in
better than
WrestleMania
it deserved.
13.
Yep.
But WrestleMania 13 can't be the worst WrestleMania ever because it's got that match. But it's still considered a bad WrestleMania.
Right. That's a good comparison. Then.
WrestleMania 25, I think it's got that match, and it did good business. So it's got to be in kind of the average category.
Right.
But it certainly can't be considered great, even though the business was good and it has the all-time match, because the storytelling was pretty lousy.
Well, and again, this is where, again, we shouldn't let them off the hook just because of HBK Taker, because, again, they knew what they had going in. If you go all the way back to the first Hell in a Cell, fall of 97.
Which, by the way,
yeah,
I don't know. I mean, you're in these forums more than I am.
Yeah.
Am I a minority person in that I prefer the Hell in a Cell match to the WrestleMania 25 match?
You would be a minority probably in that, yeah.
Wow, that's very disappointing.
If for no other reason than the ending. I think the ending being a clean one at WrestleMania.
I think, you know what? I'm the only person that absolutely thinks that was the best ending possible, Bad Blood.
Yeah, but
that was to debut a character like that.
I think it puts a ceiling on the match. I don't think
I
don't.
Be
that, 5 stars with a crap finish.
I see. That's where I disagree. I think that was the Michaels had to go over in that match. What's he going to beat him clean? That'd been terrible.
Right.
That wasn't his character. I think that was the best pop. You could not come up with a better ending than what they did at Bad Blood.
Between that, and they didn't cross paths very much when Shawn came back in 2002. There was because
Shawn was always Raw, Taker was always SmackDown.
Yeah, there was the great finish at the Rumble in 07, where
Yeah.
they had the prolonged, it was like the match within the match, essentially. So they knew what they had. I'm not going to give them a lot of credit for OMG, because like you said, it wasn't a program they built as heavily as some of the really bad programs on the show that they put more effort into. But it's a thing where, I was telling you this off here, my theory is, I mean, when you're looking at top guy versus top guy chemistry, they're on the top tier of all time.
Yes.
They're up there. HBK Taker, as far as chemistry, they're on that tier with Hogan Piper, Hogan Savage, Flair Savage. I'm talking WWE, WWF history. Austin Rock. I mean, these are the chemistry things here in terms of all-time top
They
guys.
worked on a pay-per-view 4 times, I believe.
Yeah.
Ground Zero, which is like the forgotten one. That's
And
the,
probably had the best pay-per-view matches of any of the group I've mentioned, short of possibly Austin Rock.
There isn't a single one of the 4 that I'm thinking of on pay-per-view that was under 4 stars.
Yeah.
The Ground Zero match
They're
is
amazing
the
together.
Ground Zero match is easily the weakest.
Yeah.
And it's the one that no one probably remembers. It set up the Hell in a Cell.
Yeah.
Go watch that match, folks. That was an awesome brawl. And it was a very different kind of brawl than they do today.
It was. And for
But,
go ahead.
But the Hell in a Cell's all-timer.
Mm-hmm.
WrestleMania 25's all-timer. And before we put a bow on this, but a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of foreshadowing as we go ahead to the next episode of 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Michael's Takers, we know, is a much more featured and prominent program going into the next year's WrestleMania.
That's right.
The match may be turned out slightly not as good,
Mm-hmm.
but the build was outstanding
It was.
for the rematch.
One last thing I want to say about Mania here, and again, talk about build or no build in this case. We talked about this before. We didn't have title versus title, Cena, Batista, whatever. Where we did have title versus titles, they unified the tag matches, bumped it to
Titles.
the tag titles were unified, bumped it to the pre-show because they were doing the Miss WrestleMania Battle Royal. They needed to take that time for, and God knows I love me some Kid Rock. But you're taking the time. You're bumping the tag
Of course
title
you love Kid
unification.
Rock.
I love Kid Rock. You're bumping the unification match to the pre-show so that you have time for Kid Rock to play all of the Miss WrestleMania contestants to the ring. He's playing his music. He's jamming, and they're parading to the ring. Instead of just doing a thing, you cut to all of the broads are in the ring and whatever, and you have time to fit that match in.
It's the pomp and circumstance of WrestleMania.
It-
I don't know. It was. I remember at the time that was a
Stupid.
bone of contention from some, but in the grand scheme of things,
You've called me Nelson Nitpicker for that
yeah,
one.
I don't think that.
You're
I know that.
unifying the tag titles.
I know that sounds like it's a big deal, but it really wasn't.
Just first of
It
all,
wasn't,
again,
was it? I mean, I know that they didn't do a good job of it, but like, let's say that's
self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a chance to start over. You have unified by God tag titles. Remember when they unified the world and the WWE title, and Paul Heyman's like, now Brock Lesnar feels like it's worth his time to go after the unified or whatever they're calling it. It's all in how you treat it, Kyle Ross.
I agree. There's some
all
of
how
that.
you treat
I
it.
don't think it would have. I don't think that necessarily would have made that WrestleMania any better. The problems are always at the top. It's like when my
it's down
good
my
buddy
list.
Chad Repex was like, oh, they should have done Greg Valentine, Tito Santana at WrestleMania 1. Yeah, they didn't have to do
It's
that.
well down my list, but it's on my list of things that were wrong. So again, that's the thing. I mean, for 2009, I guess we disagree on the magnitude of it, but neither of us liked this
I think
show.
this is a very average show.
I say below average.
But here's the thing: most of these Rumble shows in the aughts, in the 21st century,
Yeah,
which Jack Swagger is the embodiment of, according to Matt Stryker,
yeah.
I've liked most of them. Me calling this show average, believe it or not, puts it kind of low on the spectrum.
I will.
There aren't many Rumble shows in the 2000s so far that we've talked about that I didn't like. From the first decade, from 2000 to 2009,
Yeah.
the only one that I absolutely can tell you was worse than this one is 06.
Yeah.
Easily worse
I-
than this one. But I generally like most of the Rumble shows. So the fact that I'm calling this kind of average, it's not a ringing endorsement.
And I have 06 at 1.5, but I'll tell you this may surprise you. I have it at 2 stars, tied for 22nd. The only show after this that I have even as low, also at 2 stars, is 16. Every other show from 2009
You have
on.
2015 higher than this? That's ridiculous.
Yeah, spoiler alert, 2.5 stars.
Dude.
By the way, and I
don't understand your ratings.
We're gonna do a 3-way dance for 2015, as our good friend, fellow dignitary Jake Digman, who was there. He's going to give us a bird's eye view of what it was like to be there. We're going to talk about that with him. Jennings has offered to come on with us.
Oh, he has.
Yes.
I didn't remember signing off on Jake Digman coming on this program.
Jennings is joining us for 2015 when we get to that point. Yeah, there's something to look forward to.
I'll give him the stunner.
Kick wham stunner, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
All
Good.
right.
We can rehash our Rumble ratings for him too, because by the time we get there, we need. I'm going to have everything put into place. I'm kind of tinkering, like when I say like this one's 2 3/4, 3 stars.
Mm-hmm.
Once they're all done, because I'll be honest with you, 11 through 13.
Okay.
I definitely need to rewatch those again. I have an idea where they're going to be placed, but I could be wrong.
All right.
I'm going to go in with an open mind. By the time we get, because I know where I'm going to place 14 and 15, low. I'll have my entire spectrum reviewed.
I would imagine 16 as well. You couldn't be that enamored of 16.
That one was in the average category.
Yeah. Okay.
That one was kind of close to this one.
I have it in a tie with this one.
Okay, well, I just have that a higher tie. You also think 1993 is great.
Not great. It's not in my top 10. It's tied for 11th.
Frickin' thank God.
Yeah, it's tied for 11th. My tie for 11th is 2011, 2007, 2004, 1993, 2014. Wow, I have 14 that high. Go figure.
I don't get. All you do is yell at me about Daniel Bryan this, Daniel Bryan that, and you put over those two. Jesus H. freaking Christ, man. Make up your mind. I don't know what you look at in these Rumbles.
I'll have to look at my notes, but I guess I liked everything else in 2014 aside from the Daniel Bryan treatment. Which is kind of liking everything.
Which is like saying, Jews had a nice decade in the 30s, except for, the Nazis.
I was going to say, which is kind of like liking everything about anal warts except how they appear on you.
Yes, yeah.
So, all right. We'll get to all of that as we move along here, but it's been great breaking down 2009 today, and we'll get to 2010 when we resume the series.
As we bring the show to a close, we would like to extend our deepest gratitude to NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, all Clear Channel affiliates, TNT, TBS, USA, UPN, Deadspin.com, YouTube.com, YTMND.com, MySpace.com, various blogs, Fox News, CNN, CNBC, MSNBC, IamBoard.com, Billboard.com, Google.com, ESPN, ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPN Classic, NBA TV, NFL Network, Sports Time Ohio, Athlon Magazine, Comedy Central, Cartoon Network, The Boomerang Channel, QVC, BET, The Spice Channel, Steno Notebooks, Manwich, Papermate Office Supplies, waitresses, strippers, bartenders, garbage men, janitors, microwave popcorn, the writers of The Office, Scrubs, Entourage, My Name is Earl, Oz, Metalocalypse and the Boondocks, Aquafina, and the periodic table of elements.